Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the ILS precision approach. Now, an ILS stands for Instrument Landing System, and to shoot an ILS approach there need to be four components. There needs to be a localizer, a glide slope, some distance measuring equipment or DME, and visual equipment for when you decide to go visual, so PAPIs, airport lighting. So for today we're going to be looking at the ILS localizer runway 16 left approach, and we will be shooting the approach into Alliance in the simulator today. So from top to bottom we have the information needed for the approach and airport information, our frequencies, our graphic description, or a graphic representation of the approach, little airport diagram with approach lighting and all that, and the profile view of the approach. So, looking at the ILS approach, when we do an approach briefing, we'll talk about the approach briefing. When we do an approach briefing, we like to use an acronym called WARM-BIF. The W stands for where are we? The A stands for what is our ATIS information. R is any radio frequencies we need to use. So our ILS frequency of 110.15, ATIS 126.925, tower 3515, and ground control 32.65. And these are the frequencies we'll use throughout the approach and landing phase. And it's based on whatever airport you're going to. Nav aids, so what nav aids will we be using? We'll be using the Ranger Vortac, and over here we could also be using information from the Maverick VOR DME, and we can use those for cross radials, and we can also use the Milsat Vortac for finding our missed approach fix. So on the ILS approach, usually for the ILS 16 left into Alliance, the ATC will vector us in between these 2 points, RU and WIGZU. And we'll probably be at about 3,000 feet. Now, you see this 4,000 and this 2,400. These are the altitudes we need to cross these fixes at. And the line below them means that we can cross these fixes at or above these certain altitudes, but we cannot legally go below these altitudes until we have crossed these fixes. Now, what's special about this 2400 fix, you can see this little lightning bolt in this X. This X is the Maltese cross, and this is what signifies the final approach fix on a precision approach. And the lightning bolt signifies that this altitude is the minimum glide slope intercept altitude, so this is the lowest altitude you can descend to on this approach to intercept the glide slope. And you'll descend down to 2400, and then you'll capture the glide slope at this final approach fix. And this 2400 means, this little 2400 means you will cross the final approach fix at 2400. So if for some reason you don't intercept the glide slope at the final approach fix on different approaches, it'll show the altitude in MSL what you will cross the final approach fix at. Then we have our minimums here, and the minimums are, as you can see, are broken up for the type of approach we're doing and our approach category. Approach categories are based off your VREF speed or your approach reference speed, and that is based on your VSO times 1.3. And for the ILS today, our minimums are 923 feet MSL, and we need at least 1,800 feet RVR. So RVR stands for runway visual range, and it's how far you can see down the runway in hundreds of feet. We'll be using our Category A minimums because Category A is for approach speeds up to and including 90 knots. Category B is for 91 to 120 knots. Category C is 121 to 140. Category D is 141 to 165, and then Category E is 166 and up. Over here we see the little airport that has our approach lighting and some more airport information as well as some obstacle notes around the airport. And then you see this information here. So from the final approach fix to your missed approach point, it is 5.1 nautical miles. And if for some reason you lost your DME or you can't find distance, what you'll do is, upon crossing the final approach fix, is you will start a timer, and if you maintain 90 knots ground speed, you will cross the missed approach point after 3 minutes and 24 seconds, at which time, if you do not have the runway environment in sight, you aren't stabilized on the approach, or you don't have the prescribed visibility, then you will initiate the missed approach. Anyway, coming back to the briefing, so the B stands for the briefing, and just kind of go over stuff on this plate. The I stands for what our intentions are. So our intentions are to land. And F stands for final configuration. So on precision approaches, when the glide slope indicator, so that horizontal bar, is approximately 1 dot above, so when it's on the top of the circle, center of the circle on the CDI indicator, which I'll show you when we get into the aircraft, that's when you configure for the approach, for dropping the landing gear, setting approach flaps, and reducing to your approach speed. Then when you go visual, you can set landing flaps, reduce your speed to landing speed. So with all this covered, we're going to then transition into the approach, or into the simulator, and we'll start flying. So we'll pull up the ATIS. As you can see, it's starting to broadcast the ATIS. We're currently descending down to 2,400 feet at about 115 knots indicated, and we have the approach set up here on the CDI needle. It is important, if you're flying with a Garmin 430 or something similar, if your CDI button is set to GPS mode, you push this and set it to localizer mode. Otherwise, you won't capture the ILS frequency. So it's always important that you set that. And as you can see, we are flying along. There is Alliance. For our purposes today, I will be looking down as to simulate us being in instrument conditions. We're flying on a heading of about 120 now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that to fly a heading of 130. And right now, autopilot is engaged, but when the glide slope is intercepted, I will disengage and hand fly this approach. I have my mixture set to full rich, prop is completely set, and because this is a low-wing aircraft, we'll set the fuel tank selector to one of our tanks. We'll set it to the right tank. Alright, so we have the ATIS. We'll switch to tower. And we will arm approach. And as you can see, the aircraft is now turning to intercept the localizer. So the localizer is alive, and because our minimums are 923, we don't have a 923 marking on our altimeter, so we'll use the next highest indication, which is 940. So localizer is alive, glide slope is coming alive, so when the glide slope reaches the top of the circle, I'll set approach flaps, slow to 90 knots, drop the gear. Alright, so localizer is coming alive. We did overshoot the localizer just a bit. That does happen in this sim, so it will come back and recapture. So we are now 1 dot above, so I will reduce to final approach speed. We are in the white arc, so approach flaps, and landing gear comes down. So gumps, gasket both, undercarriage is down and 3 green. Mixture full rich, or correction, gas is set to the right tank. Undercarriage is down 3 green. Mixture full rich, power full forward, and we are now descending on the approach, recapturing the glide slope, autopilot coming off, and we will recapture the localizer. So now I'm going to try and maintain an indicated airspeed of about 90 knots. It is wind calm today, so that should maintain our ground speed of about 90 knots. A little bit faster. And we're coming back on the localizer. We're a little bit high on the, or a little bit low on the glide slope, so we're going to increase our power and slow our descent rate just a hair. Still getting a little off on that localizer, so we want to maintain a heading of 166 for our approach course, making small corrections to get back on the approach path. You do not want to make big corrections. So as you can see, we're getting a little high, so we'll bring the power back, pitch nose forward, and increase our airspeed just a hair. And we're getting a little bit to the left, so increase our, or decrease our power a little bit more. And based on our airspeed indicator, we are pretty close to our approach speed, passing through 1,500 feet now. We're going to bring back our power, so we're going to increase our power a bit. Didn't mean to say bring back. And we're going to turn a couple degrees, or a few degrees to the left, just to keep our, on the localizer. We don't want to make big corrections, like I said. We want to make nice, smooth, gentle corrections. So now we're about 500 feet to minimums, or 400 feet to minimums. And we are coming through. As you do get closer to the runway, the needles do get more and more sensitive, so you need to be more careful about that. 100 feet till minimums. Getting a little low, so we'll increase our power. Alright, there is minimums, so not bad on the approach. We were a little bit to the left. So now at this point I will start decreasing our airspeed to our landing speed of about 70 knots. And I will also bring out the last bit of flaps. And we'll make sure that we land nice and smoothly. So now we just want to start a nice gentle round out, bring the power smoothly out. And that was a nice touchdown. So that's how you shoot an ILS.